You're listening to Investigation Insiders by Integris Intelligence.
Hello again, everyone. This is Forhad. Welcome to another episode of Investigation Insiders. Hope you are all doing well, staying safe, staying healthy. We're recording this episode on September 10th, 2021. Now, this is the first time I've ever actually mentioned the date of the recording, and it's for a specific reason. Today is the eve of the 20th anniversary of the September 11th, 2001 attacks against the US. And we're actually going to do an episode just discussing our personal experiences on that day, primarily as a tribute to all of those that lost their lives, were impacted in other ways, all the families, all the children, everyone that was impacted. So joining me today are two people. One is my right hand woman, Joe Morrow. How are you, Joe?
I am doing well. How you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm glad to have you again. As I mentioned on one of the previous episodes, uh, people enjoy having you on the show and are always asking about you. So today, obviously, has an importance, just personally, professionally, for all of us. So I'm glad to be doing this episode with you today.
Me too.
And also joining us is someone that we work very regularly with, Joe and I, Craig Cusinelli, who is our manager of investigations. He joined the company earlier this year when Integris acquired his firm, the firm that he owned. So, Craig, welcome to your first episode of Investigation Insiders.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, yeah, you obviously are joining on a pretty important episode in terms of just, again, it's our 20th episode, 20th anniversary of September 11th. So I'm glad to be talking about the topic with both of you guys. So again, we're going to talk about our personal sort of experience on that day. And, just I'm sure everyone has these different sort of anecdotes and things that they went through on that day, feelings that they had, and just kind of connecting with one another. So maybe we could start with, we'll start with Joe. Where were you when you heard about the planes crashing into the towers?
I was at work. As many of our listeners know, I worked for the FBI for many years. I was actually in the cafeteria having some coffee with a couple of colleagues when we heard the first plane crash into the building, and it was kind of odd because we first just heard it and we're like, wow, what is that? But with all the construction going on, we didn't even think too much about it. We said, oh man, it must have been some kind of crane or something. And then we got curious, and then somebody yelled out, looking out the window, and said that there's the World Trade Center is on fire. So we all got up to see that, and it was total chaos by that end because everybody got up, left their breakfast, and went off to see what we needed to do at that point. It's a little crazy.
Yeah. So for clarification purposes for the audience, all three of us are New Yorkers, and we were in New York, different places in New York City, but we were all in New York. So Joe's obviously talking about the FBI offices in Lower Manhattan. I'm correct about that, right, Joe?
Yeah, correct. 26 Federal Plaza. So it's about 7-8 blocks away from where the Twin Towers were.
Sure. Craig, where were you?
I was also at work at a private investigation agency located in Midtown, and I was actually standing in a back area where we actually had a view of the towers. I remember it was a nice day, a lot like today, and I was talking with my supervisor, and I noticed smoke coming out of one of the towers, the North Tower, I think it was. And I said, "Oh, something must have happened, an explosion, or maybe something hit the tower." And my supervisor, who was a retired lieutenant commander in the Navy, said that was no accident. How could a plane miss a building of that size? Maybe it was an explosion. And as we were discussing this and going back and forth, I don't know, about 10, 15 minutes went by, and we actually saw the explosion on the other tower.
So, thanks for that info, Joe and Craig. So I was basically a kid, just um, less than, well, a little bit more than a year out of school. Everyone knows I worked for a company called Guardsmark at the time, and it was a private security firm. And that morning, we were required to go visit with our clients, meet with our officers, make sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And one of our accounts was St. John's University in Queens. And just so happened that my younger brother also attended St. John's as a student. So that morning, he actually rode there with me because I had to see the client and he was going to school. So I dropped them off. I went around and parked and went in. This is before the renovations at St. John's. Now it's a big fancy facility where public safety is, but prior to that, where they were housed was just like an old police station. And so I went in to go see the client, and a retired police officer. His name was Bob McDonald. He was the deputy, I guess, security director. And I went into his office just to say hello, and he had a TV, like these old TVs that would hang in, like if you had in the hospital or something like that. A
Hmm.
small, I mean, it couldn't have been bigger than I don't know, like 19 inches. And what happens is he points up at it and he says, I don't know what's going on, but there's something hit the towers and it's on fire. And so that was sort of the start of my journey that day and the upcoming weeks. So as you guys met, it's all like hits you in weird ways because you're confused. I don't know that any fear hit yet because I was still just sort of digesting it. And we were both just watching, so that's kind of where I was now. Like I said, the feeling for me at that point was just confusion. I wasn't sure what was going on, and I wasn't sure if I should make anything of it. Obviously, we live in New York City. A lot of different things happen, so I wasn't sure what to make of it. But Joe? What did you? I know you said that you guys were confused as well. So when you finally sort of, I guess, what were some of the rumors you were hearing before you realized what it was? What were some of the things that you were hearing about what had just happened?
I mean, my first initial reaction was that it was an accident. And then people were looking at me like, no, that was not an accident. Especially, I hadn't even heard about the second plane landing because I must have been in the elevator or something. So by the time I went up to try to get to the office and see what we were, going to do moving forward that day, I didn't hear about the second one. I started hearing that from the news and from people telling me what they saw. But once I got around more FBI people, they were like, "That's not an accident." So obviously, it's a terrorist attack. And again, I worked criminal cases, so terrorism was not in my wheelhouse by any means. So going down that direction was like, "Oh my God, what does that mean?" And then the whole fear started coming towards to me, like, all right, so if this major buildings are being attacked, and then what do we do? We're the FBI. What do we do? Are
Sure,
we
sure.
supposed to
So,
go
so
there? Are we not supposed to go there? What's the next step? Let me try to find my bosses, the supervisors, and see what it is from there. But then the fear started building. Fear for the people in the buildings. It wasn't so much fear about everybody else around. That came later.
sure, sure. So I got you. So, Craig, how about you? What were you hearing? Like, what did people think? I know you mentioned your supervisor said um, it wasn't an accident, right? But like, did you hear any room? And I did. I was in a unique setting. So, did you hear like, what was going on? Did you hear about the other planes? Did you hear about like what were you hearing before you kind of knew what it was?
We really didn't know. At first, we all assumed it was an accident of some sort, and then after that, we just didn't know. And um, we we started to talk, and one of our employees who was in the military started getting reports in from friends of his about what might be going on, but they really weren't even certain at that point in time. They heard about other planes that were possibly in the air, but they didn't know where they were going, where they were headed to, and so there was a lot of confusion
Sure.
regarding about what just happened.
Right. So I think that's what a lot of people feared. So I was in a kind of a strange setting because again, I don't know what I felt, right? At that moment I wasn't sure what I felt, but uh, what crept into my head is that I sort of had a responsibility to fulfill my job. That's what I was thinking about at that time, right at that moment before I knew what was going on. I wanted to go over. So our officers were actually stationed. The St. John's had just built new dorms on campus. So I actually went t- back towards the dorms. And by the time I was walking there, um, there were already people, groups of students, staffers, people just gathering, talking. You could see people emotional. You could see people crying. And it's again, it still seems strange to me. And what was in my head was, I just have a job to do. Let me go do it. Let me make sure the officer's okay. Let me try to call into. So I wanted to go see all of the officers first. And when I got in and we were at the reception at each of the, I think it was 5 dorms at the time, I went into the main one where our day supervisor was, and I remember speaking to him. And as I was speaking to him, people are coming in. They're like, did you hear? There's all these planes. They're hitting here. They're hitting, and I just remember people were talking about like the Washington Mall. I heard about like the White House. I heard about the Empire State. Like again, there were all these rumors in there, and I was just like, now it's starting to be like, all right, well, there's obviously more than just what I saw in Bob's office. There's obviously something more going on, and that's I was just again I was still confused, but it started to creep in that there's something more going on, and so um, what I then tried to do was much like I'm sure you guys did was pick up my cell phone. And I wasn't, again, I was thinking job mode. I wasn't thinking family mode yet. I wasn't thinking it might impact us like that yet. So I was trying to call my boss, right? And just try to get a sense of, and the phone calls weren't going through. And that, again, very, very strange, right? I'm sure, did you guys experience that as well with the phones? Were you trying to call? I mean, Joe, you may have been at an office, so I'm not sure if the cell phone issue was impacting you, but did you guys
Yeah,
feel
because
that
we
as well?
weren't in the office for long, so I was trying to contact our bosses when I was in the office, but we were told very quickly to leave the building in case our building became some kind of target. So my cell phone was not even working then. I think I just got a new work phone and it wasn't even fully set up yet. So I'm borrowing people's cell phones and hoping that you can get through, but it was very sporadic call activity at that point. That was what's scary because your loved ones are concerned about it. And that's after you try to get through the work stuff and figure out what you're going to do. But trying to call my husband, check on my family,
Right.
that it was hard trying to get through to everybody because the calls were not being picked up.
Yep. Yep. How about you, Craig? Did you experience some of the same things?
Yes, definitely communication problems for quite some time. And it's been some 20 something years now that have gone by, but if I remember correctly, I was eventually able to get through to someone, and we uh, we established where we would meet up if necessary. But that's all I was able to do, and I think I was lucky to get that one call through.
Yeah.
Sure. Actually, that's what happened for me. Was that I finally was able to get through to my boss at the time, who was also retired from the FBI, and he he was in Queens, in fact, also. And he kind of filled me in on what he knew at the time and just said, this doesn't appear to be, an accident. There's different reports coming out, but, I need to get into Manhattan and I'm going to need your help to do that. And what he asked me to do was get to his residence, which was, again, not too far from where St. John's was. And the trains, the bridges, everything had been shut down by that point. And what he needed me to do was drive him to the city. Now, we knew at that point that um, uh, that may not be possible, but the goal was to get as close as possible. So at the very least, he could maybe walk across a bridge or do something like that. So
Mhm.
that's when I realized, all right, well, this is now getting a little bit scary, right? Like now it's yes work, now it's yes family. So the first family I knew where who was at home, so I wasn't as worried about them. I'm sure they were worried about us, but they couldn't get through to us. But
Hmm.
my brother is who I immediately thought about, and just the most he didn't have a cell phone. But the most bizarre thing happened. I just drove back to the area where I had dropped them off. And of course, like he appears out of the blue. I mean, he just comes out of nowhere. I don't know where I don't know how it happened, but that was my fear. And he came and I said, get in the car. We got to get out of here. Right. So that's kind of, how it came full circle for me that something serious was going on. And yes, work mattered, but now I do have to be concerned about my loved ones as well. And I can't tell
Yeah.
you the relief that came. I can still feel it now as I speak about it. When I saw him, and it's like, I was so grateful that that had happened, because otherwise, obviously I was very, very anxious about what was going on. And the campus by that point wasn't like full hysteria. I mean, people were, that's the way it felt anyway to me. I mean, someone else may have had a different perception of it, but for me, it felt that way. So I spoke to our supervisor. I said, just stand by, keep everyone here until further notice, and I'll circle back around to you. So that's what it felt like for me. Once I knew what it was. Joe, you kind of already alluded to it. Craig, tell me, once you realized what it was, what were the thoughts going through your head?
The thoughts were to when we decided that work was no longer a priority, to get back home. And in order to do that, we had to walk on foot. And we walked over the 59th Street Bridge with crowds of people. And I remember seeing jet planes in the air, smoke billowing down from the towers. And it was a very surreal moment. It almost felt like being in a movie. And eventually was able to make it home, and all of the family members were at home, and it was just so confusing as to why this was happening and what was happening. And we all still didn't know
Sure.
exactly what was going on.
Sure. Yeah. No, the confusion is definitely at that point. I think that's probably a good word for most people. So, Joe, tell me about what happened when they evacuated you guys from the building, right? What happened with you from there?
They told us to go. We have, a central meeting place in case of emergency. So most of the people that we saw, we all met there. Still trying to figure out, we're working. This is an FBI matter. If it's terrorism, what should we be doing from here? But not being able to be in contact with anybody. A huge part of our agent staff headed towards the Twin Towers because today went to go see what was going on. So once we just got word to just, make your way home. So I'm at the park. I'm getting together with a couple of friends that I know that live in Brooklyn, where I lived at the time.
Hmm.
Um, and I had my car parked in the parking garage. And I don't remember if I was afraid that they were just going to close the bridge and I couldn't get my car over, or I just said, we just started walking. So
So
I wound up
when you
leaving
say
my car there.
when you say the parking garage, tell me you're referring to like the one the bureau had, one at the. I mean,
No,
tell
it was a couple blocks down near
couple.
Mulberry
Okay,
Street.
I got you. I got you.
So
So
it was external one, but we, some of us were lucky to get a parking spot at the time, and I had the spot fantastic, but I didn't even think to get the car. I was just like, we need to get home, and if we can't take the cars over the bridge, let's start walking. So
hmm.
I wound up doing that. So when
So
I
what
got
bridge did you go over to get home?
the Brooklyn Bridge
Brooklyn Bridge, and then what neighborhood did you live in at the time?
in Diker Heights,
Tiger Heights. So how
yeah.
long was the walk home? And I mean,
Uh,
was there someone that went basically most of the way with you? And do you remember some of the things you were talking about?
Yeah, I started walking over the bridge with two women. One is still a good friend of mine, and one has since passed, an older woman. And we just said we're all in Brooklyn. We need to get over there and then figure it out from the Brooklyn side of the bridge, which
Yep.
what the courthouses are. Um, Actually, one of them wound up meeting a friend of hers, was close to her neighborhood, so she took off with him, which was good. And Rose and I were left, and I was like, we both live in the same neighborhood. We figured we'll try the buses because buses were running. So we walked quite a bit. We got on a bus, jam-packed buses, because everybody's trying to get on a bus to get closer into a neighborhood. The line was ridiculous. Finally made it on, and I made my way down and closer to the Bay Ridge area. And then I had able to get a call to my husband. I'm like, I can't switch buses. Just come here and meet me. And he did, and it was just a pure relief. He thought I was dead because when I started walking over the bridge is when the first building came down.
Wow. Wow.
So
So
here I
so
am, like 7 blocks away, and I'm seeing the building starting to come down, and we turned and really started hustling over that bridge. It was total chaos at that point.
do you remember like obviously there were the people that you were with, but what about the people around you? What did it feel like? Or were you even able to sort of digest any of that as far as what was going
I
on
was. I
around
mean, certain things just stick in your mind, even 20 years later. Women threw her shoes off because they were slowing her down. She just left them there and just started running over the bridge. Who's trying to carry who? People were yelling and screaming and crying. And, I had an older woman with me, and I was just like, let's just walk really fast. I had heels on because I didn't think to change into flats. It
you?
was
Right.
just a matter of just go and go and go. Yeah, the people, it was a little crazy. There were still cars going over the bridge, which
Hmm.
I didn't
Yeah,
realize
meaning
later that.
towards Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So I could have taken my car and saved all of that aggravation, but seeing the building come down and the ash and soot heading in our direction, we all stood there for a second to take that in, and then all of a sudden it was like turn and Get your butt over the bridge. Get to the other side.
So like you guys, again, I wasn't there, and I don't know that I've ever had a conversation with someone that kind of went the path that you went. Like, did the smoke reach you guys, or were you just able to see that at a distance? I don't think so, right? I don't think the actual smoke and soot and all that, it got that far.
Oh no, it did. It did get
Oh,
over there.
it did.
It like it wasn't like dense, like you were right there, but it was
Yep.
definitely there. We had ashes all over our clothes, our hair, everything.
Wow.
Making it over that
Wow.
bridge, we were just like, and you could see papers flying all the way into Brooklyn, just that came from the site. Yeah, it
Wow.
carried. By the time we got over there, everybody was kind of covered in this ash, and we were just looking at each other like we're all in the same boat, and
Sure.
we're happy to be alive, and we just want to keep walking and get our butts home.
Sure. No, that's pretty wild. You don't have any pictures from that day. No one took a picture of you or anything like that, right?
No, no. I do remember the outfit I had on though.
Do you?
Yeah, I couldn't wear it again. I
Yeah,
could not
yeah, no,
wear it again. Yeah.
I can see that. Craig, what about you? What do you remember about walking home? So whereabouts in the city were you? Like approximately what street and what avenue, and then what path did you
Uh,
take to get to the 59th Street Bridge?
Around Kips Bay, Murray Hill,
So
and
you were on the east
I
side.
remember, yes, and we had quite a walk to get to the bridge, but there were crowds of people headed in the same direction, and I was actually headed in the opposite direction of where Joe was going. I lived in Astoria, Queens at the time, and we saw the smoke billowing from downtown, and just going over the bridge were crowds of people. Cars that were still on the bridge really had nowhere to go because there were so many people. So the best option was to get out and walk if you were in a car. And eventually was able to make it back home, and just turned on the news at that point to just follow what was going on.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. And do you remember? Like what? First of all, you may have mentioned it already, but were you with anyone? Were you by yourself going home?
Going home, I was actually with my ex-wife at the time.
Okay.
She worked in the city as well, um, and she didn't work far from me. And we were able to, thank God, just make it back home. It was quite a journey. I don't think I ever wanted to do that
Yeah.
again.
Do you remember people? Do you remember, like, Joe mentioned a couple of things that just stick out in her mind? The woman with the shoes, just things like. Do you remember anything specific that just, even if it's a little bit, just strange? Do you remember anything from that day?
I just remember it being very chaotic, and uh, uh, the look of fear or panic in everyone's eyes. That I'll never forget.
Yeah.
And people just rushing to get wherever they needed to get to, um, and doing it by any means that they could.
Sure.
Um, Other than that, don't remember anything specific other than the jet planes in the air. I will never forget that.
Sure.
I didn't know what to think. I didn't know if we were at war, or all sorts of thoughts run through your head. But I just couldn't make sense of what was going on at the time.
Sure. Sure. Well, interesting. So for me, um, oddly, I was going in the opposite direction that you guys were.
Mm.
So my brother and I, we left the St. John's campus, drove over to Forest Hills, in fact. So St. John's is in Jamaica. Forest Hills, again, it's probably an 8-10 minute ride from where we were. We picked up my boss at the time. Just strange things that you remember, right? So I was only, again, there for a little over a year. Now, this particular person is my closest friend today, and someone that really helped shape my life and my career. But at that time, I didn't know him that well. And when I had, again, I was a kid, not a ton of money. I had a car. It was actually a Mazda 626, right? It was a 1993 Mazda 626. And I don't know if it was the days or weeks leading up to it, I had an issue where my muffler, my exhaust system, if I hit a bump, would scrape the ground, right? It had
Mhm.
lowered a little bit. And so going to his house, all I could think about is, crap, he's going to get into my car and all he's going to hear is the noise of his motor. And
And he's
so,
gonna say, I don't pay this guy enough.
yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. So anyone that knows him, he's got a really funny sense of humor, right? And so we pick him up, we get into the car. I tell my brother, get in the back seat. He comes into the front seat, and we're going down Queens Boulevard, right? So this is not too far from the courthouses where we started, and we're heading towards the Queensboro Bridge, right? So, Craig, you're coming in our direction, we're going in yours, right? There weren't a lot of cars on the road, but I just remember all the droves of people. I can't remember the timeline, but I just remember there were just people and people and people just coming in the other direction. I remember the cars too, because I guess a lot of
Yeah.
people had decided to hitchhike and think. So many of the cars were just filled with people as well, right? Some of the
Mhm.
pickup trucks had people in the back, like just things like that I remember. And the conversation in the car, again, I didn't know him as well, so I was a little bit nervous. I still wasn't thinking about, I was just thinking about my job at the time, right? And so of course we get a few blocks a few lights in, and Jim says, what the hell is that sound? And I said, oh, I'm sorry about that. That's the car. It's the muffler. I don't know what. I might have even said something like, to make it sound like it just happened, which obviously it did, right? I was embarrassed. I was nervous, and he says, "Yeah, I just remember." He said, something. I thought someone was. I thought, like, basically saying it sounded like someone was attacking again or something like that. It was really, really loud and disturbing, right? And so I just couldn't wait for this guy to get out of my car because I was just incredibly embarrassed, right? And that's all I could think about at the time. So what happens is, as we get closer to the bridge, I don't remember how long it felt like forever to me, right? So we're heading back in that direction, and finally, um, he says to me, I don't think we're going to get over the bridge by car, right? What he was, obviously, he was a retired agent, and he was in charge of the security company. All of our clients, I mean, obviously, there's a lot going on here that I'm not talking about at all of our client facilities and people. We had to account for everyone. Like, there's so many moving parts, and he just wanted to get to the central part. Now, I wasn't going to go into the city with him because my responsibility was Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens. It wasn't a lot of locations that I was in charge of. There wasn't a ton of people like there were in the city, but he was advising me on what to do in terms of staying back and making sure all of our people were okay. And he needed to get in. So I remember we drove, and he said, "I just need you to get me as close to the bridge as possible, and then I'm going to do my best to get across." And what ended up happening was the lower roadway, it was just impossible to kind of get through. I don't remember if it was the cars, the people, whatever it was very difficult. So um, at that time, I knew that, like the upper roadway, I knew the route to it, so that's what I followed, and I was able to get pretty close. And he jumped off, and again, you just don't know. You just don't know. I mean, that could have been our last meeting ever, and this 20-year friendship may not be here today. But I just remember dropping him off. He expressed his appreciation. I think he made a comment about the car, and he went off on his way. And then I circled back, and what I needed to do at that point was I was thinking about my family, and they were calling. I knew after the fact that they were trying to reach me, and they couldn't, and they were friends. So that occurred to me that I had to get back home to home base just to make sure that they were safe. They knew that we were safe. So that's kind of what happened that morning for me. So just a lot of strain. And again, I was a kid. I there was so much that I think I would have thought of today that I wasn't thinking about that day. And in some ways, I mean, that's a blessing because I think I would have been a lot more worried. I wouldn't have been worried about the muffler, let's just say. I would have been worried about
Right.
my family, the people that
Mhm.
work with me, all the people that were being impacted. So anyway,
Yeah.
that's where I was. So all right, so now we all get back home or get back to our loved ones. What were the next few days like for you guys? Joe, you wanna go?
Sure. I think I was numb. I had two little kids, a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old, so I took care of what I needed to take care of with the kids, but I felt like I was in a fog almost. I was glued to the news reports. I was anxious to hear from somebody at work to tell me when to come in, where to go. We still were kind of up in the air about where we're going to report to work. They were shutting down all these places in Lower Manhattan, so I knew my office was closed. And I'm like, how were we going to manage it, for that? So it was several, I don't remember how many days, a few days, 2 or 3 days that I was waiting to hear back. But I'm not one to sit and wallow, but I found myself like I just couldn't function for a bit. I functioned when I had to, but I did not mentally. My brain was fried, I think, just taking it all in, realizing the gravity of the situation, the number of people that were lost. I just sat around and I'm like, I just can't believe this happened. I think the rest of the world was kind of in a similar place too, that this is what's going on. And then I was like ready to do something about it. Being where I worked, I'm like, all right, I know I don't work terrorism cases, but what the hell should we be doing?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a rough few days just trying to process it. Thanking God that I hadn't lost anybody close to me, family wise and friend wise, but
Yeah.
it was not a good place.
Yeah. No, no, for sure. What about you, Craig? What were the next few days like for you?
Pretty similar, pretty much in a daze. And it was a very somber time. Uh,
Mm.
just all of the lives lost. Watching things on the news, the video clips, and I think everyone was just in shock at what had occurred. And as as far as work was concerned, I don't even think that we went back to the office until later that week. If we did, I honestly can't remember even going back after that happened until later on. And it was just a very sad time. I just remember that. And everyone just huddling around the TV, watching the news, and just wondering what was going to happen next.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the TV's playing and the CNN and the local news channels and all that sort of stuff. And I do remember that. Again, for me, because I work for a security firm, once I knew that my friends, my family, and the people we worked with, then everyone was safe, then it was again, this is a blessing in many ways. There wasn't much time for any of us to think. We just had so much going on, really, for certainly the next few weeks, the next few months. People were again, staying in the office. We were doing 12-hour shifts. We were all over the place. And again, I came into the city as needed, but my responsibility was Long Island. But I still remember coming into the city, and obviously they had that area by Ground Zero. You couldn't get in there unless you needed to, and you had to show ID and proof and all that sort of stuff. But I just remember the smell. That's something that really
Mhm.
sticks out in my mind. I remember like a positive memory for me is the camaraderie, right? Like between my coworker. Again, I'm still very, very close with many of the people that I was shoulder to shoulder with that day, and the upcoming weeks and all that sort of stuff. And certainly that experience brought us all closer together. There's a lot of stories in that, which again, I don't want to get too far into. Some good, some bad, some very, very funny. But I remember the people, and I think we'll always have a bond that way
Right.
with the people that we worked alongside. So you know, one of the things that again, for me, because we were just in work mode and all that sort of stuff, it it was confusing. There was anxiety, but because you were busy and you were occupied, it was hard to think too much. But what I do
Mhm.
remember is, again, just how the resiliency. I mean, almost immediately after, I remember all the first responders down by the the area already cleaning up, rescue missions. I remember the president visiting. I remember the fireman, he had the arm around. I remember everyone yelling USA. I mean, the sort of camaraderie of everyone was kind of one of those, and the resiliency of the country, the people, was kind of how quickly everyone got into that mode was pretty amazing. Do you guys remember any of that?
Yes. The nation certainly pulled together, and it was very quick. And I was not surprised by that. Um, the camaraderie was certainly there, and it certainly solidified friendships, or as you stated, Forhad, people that were around you. You got closer at that point in time.
Yeah, there was a lot of like unity. It felt like everybody's on the same page. We're all on the same team. We're here to help each other out. Everybody, people helping strangers out without a second thought.
Yep.
Those that were injured and lost in this, family members we were supporting in any way.
Right. Right.
And for me, when we were working, um, we got tons and tons of letters and notes from like children from schools, just
Yep.
thanks for doing the investigation and being there and working together to at least get the answers to what happened and move forward from there. But people pulling together was really a good feeling. I
Yeah.
don't think
No.
we've ever had it that tight before or after.
Yep. Yep. No. I mean, that's certainly one of the. Even I remember. Like, remember how all the restaurants, all the places were shut down, but many of
Yeah,
these like places, they made food and brought it to the
yeah,
first responders, and things like that, like every
Yes.
single day. I just thought some of that stuff, just again, obviously there's a lot of sorrow, a lot of really bad
yeah.
things we could remember, but those are some of like the good things that I do remember. And obviously I think we're all grateful for, because if nothing else, we all needed each other, needed
Right.
strangers as much as you needed
Yeah.
people. So I guess many years later, what does it feel like today for you guys? How does it impact you? What do you think about, like, as we're doing this episode, as we talked about doing, what are you thinking about, Joe?
I mean, a lot of, this day, all day, I felt this way, and tomorrow will be similar, but just like I didn't want to go into the city. I had the opportunity to go in today, and I just said I was just so sad. Just
Uh-huh.
think about that day 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and you know, I'm blessed in many ways. I didn't lose anyone in my family. I was able to get home out of that. But just the loss of our country at that point,
Yeah.
I take that with me every day. I mean, there's people that I worked with then that have passed since or
Yeah.
are sick now from some kind of cancer due to being exposed from down there. And it's just feels like the gift that never stops giving here, but it's
Yeah.
continuous. So you never, you can't put it aside. It's part of your everyday, and you're reminded about that day and how it affected people 20 years later.
Sure. Sure. How about you, Craig?
Yes, with the anniversary coming up, every year you just think back to that time. And last year, I had never been downtown since that happened. And last year, I was um, downtown. I happened to be in that area over the summer, and I walked down to the Freedom Tower and where they have the memorial for the
Mm.
North and South Towers. And due to the pandemic, it was very quiet. There was not a lot of people down there, and um, it just struck me uh, what a horrible event that was, and all the people that had passed as a result of that, and just was able to say a prayer down there. And every year that this time of year comes along, it just makes you think back to that point in time and where you were and the people that were around you. And hopefully, we never have to experience an event like that ever again.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I would echo your thoughts on just about everything you guys said. Again, I think about the people. I think about my coworkers, my friends. I actually saw one of them earlier this week, and we actually walked down there. And it's just there's something obviously that's a nightmare about the day. I wish it
Mm.
never happened.
Hmm.
But I think what we all can do is remember and honor everyone from that day, not only here in New York, but in Washington and Pennsylvania, and remember them, and obviously um, continue to keep them in our thoughts and prayers and our memories, and honor them that way. And you know that fight, that resiliency, um, you know that's one of the amazing things about the day. And thank God for that. So
Yeah.
I
And
appreciate
Absolutely.
be
yeah.
grateful that we made it through that and are able to live our lives, because many were not able to progress that way.
Yep. Yep.
That's right.
Well, I appreciate you guys hopping on this episode and talking about this with me. And it certainly obviously brings a lot of emotions, but we continue on, right? And so thank you. And till the next episode, we encourage everyone to take every day to remember the people, the incident, and everything that happened. Obviously, these days, the anniversary reminds us of it, but truthfully, the people, the incident, is something we should remember every single day. So, Craig and Joe, thanks for joining me.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for it.
Bye. Don't forget to follow us. We are on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube.